after a beautiful day in San Francisco, which it's not as beautiful in here, but we've got beautiful thoughts and ideas and wonderful minds. My name is Barry Fry, and as some of you may have read, we're going to explore the current status of ITV, where it's at, what's working, what's not working. And I'll give a little bit of an introduction after our esteemed group will just spend a moment to introduce themselves and tell you who and what they do, where they are, and then we'll launch into it. And I'll start maybe with Josh, and then we'll go down. Does everybody have a mic here? Almost.
We're sharing 3 mics.
Okay, share some mics. Okay. Who said Google doesn't share? Okay, Josh, why don't you kick it off?
Good afternoon. Josh Martin. I work with ID Media. It's part of Interpublic Group of companies. We specialize in direct response and digital advertising. I head up their strategy team. Been with the company over 12 years. In addition to my responsibilities at ID Media, I'm also an adjunct professor at FIT, in which they have an interactive and direct marketing department.
Hello, everyone. I'm Aaron McNally. I manage the Google TV Ads team. Google TV Ads is an online platform for planning, buying, measuring, and optimizing television advertising. So this is not for purchasing online video advertising. It's actually traditional TV advertising. We have partners such as Dish Network, DirecTV, Cox, and many more national programmers like Bloomberg. We reach 42 million homes, and we have lots and lots of satisfied customers.
My name is Chip Meehan. I work for Comcast Spotlight in the Content Partnerships team. And we have 3 main areas of focus. We work with our video services team to promote all kinds of transactional on-demand content, from movies on demand to fights. Also work with the video services group to figure out what we can do with free VOD to both promote linear and also to encourage repeat VOD viewership. We're part of the dynamic ad insertion rollout. I also work with and manage the iGuide platform, which is the interactive ad on the electronic program guide. And we are also the touch point for Comcast Spotlight with all the NBCU in the Symphony sort of synergy kind of play corporately.
Pat Ivers. I'm the Executive Vice President of Engage TV, formerly known as The Band, which was a much cooler name, but nobody understood what the hell it meant. So we've changed it to Engage TV. And the swag has gotten a little less, but it's still there. We are a byproduct of Delivery Agent and The Band, so we like to think that we're the best of ITV folded into a single platform. And I started selling ITV about 10 years ago, so just after our host created ITV.
Doug McGarry. I'm with Accelerated Media. I've been in the interactive television space since I think they invented electricity. Got a company called Accelerated Media that focuses on aggregating platforms, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And used to design and build set-top boxes, and now I try to aggregate platforms for lots and lots of clients.
Hello, my name is Roland Noel. I head up the integrated advertising and commerce program for Uverse TV at AT&T. We have the only North American full IPTV deployment with 4.1 million customers, and we have what we think is one of the most innovative and comprehensive ITV environments in the marketplace today.
Great. Thank you, Roland. Thank you, everybody. So we'll let a few more come in, and then we'll just move ahead. Please find a seat. Welcome. Thanks for coming. We could order your popcorn later. So, all right, a bit of a background here. So I kind of put some thoughts together. You all know what Canoe is and was. So some thoughts as I kind of go through it. As the great gleaming ship of hope and ITV destiny, Canoe put its paddle in the rough ITV waters over 3 years ago. Many thought it would raise a big sail and deliver scale. Supporters thought it would move aggressively towards the muddied waters and achieve traction and uniformity, plus value to operators and advertisers. But alas, the great floating hope of ITV did not move well upstream against the plethora of challenging surfs and challenging tides. But some of the good news is that they came along with the docking or the sinking or the listing of Canoe. is that we can now move ahead and finally put to rest all the endless river stream of too many Canoe metaphors, similes, and parables that you've all heard. So, and by the way, to be fair, hello. To be fair, and use the final metaphor, we actually have, I don't know if he's here, Captain Pizarro. Chris, are you here? Well, he's actually now running the VOD portion of Canoe with his team of engineers, and the VOD business seems like it is going forth, even as the ITV part has. I'm not going to go into any more metaphors. So what we're going to do today is, now that that has gone and come, many argue that ITV is in a better place. Some would argue differently, and we'll explore that on this panel. So I'd actually like to start with Pat and talk about, basically where it's at today. What's the current state, would you say, of ITV advertising?
So I have to give credit to Doug. He leaned over and he said, "I didn't know this was going to be a wake for Canoe." So the industry is alive and well. It's actually probably healthier than it's ever been before. In the stage when Canoe was out developing and trying to build their allegiances and alliances, fortunately there were a lot of smart developers out there that continued to drive forth the effort. And today what we see are deeper and more extensive opportunities for advertisers and content providers. We also see data fields that are incredibly rich. So from our perspective, while those of us that were in the ITV world and trying to evangelize the opportunity, what happened with Canoe is they actually took the wind out of the sail of the industry. And I said this earlier. I mean, there were companies that were making great advancements and getting...
We're only allowed one metaphor per person, but that's okay.
Scale, and like a Navic. And when Canoe came out, everything just sort of stopped. And for those of us that were working with the individual platforms, Doug, myself, trying to aggregate opportunities, what we found was a resounding, okay, time out. We're going to wait to do this out of the national veil. We're going to wait for scale. We're going to wait for ubiquity. All of these very lofty aspirations. So frankly, as we sat and watched, we tried to keep people encouraged and going. To be honest with you, the day Canoe went down was probably a good day for some of us.
So you've actually put together with your business, Pat, a bit of an aggregated solution that does exist and is accessible now.
Yeah, I mean, and similar to Doug, we aggregate the opportunity across all platforms. It's not a level of ubiquity, and I hope it never becomes that, because I think that's the least common denominator. I want the platforms and the operators to continue to build deeper and more extensive and more farther reaching. Our challenge is to make that easier so that we can explain it to agencies and get agencies to buy in and be a part of this experience and brands.
Pat, you make a good point about the ubiquity. If the internet stayed with ubiquity, bless you, we would be looking at only banners today and no rich media and no innovations or any of the other elements that have made the web advertising so prolific. And Doug, you're also in the business of kind of aggregating and making it easy for advertisers to access. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. Funny thing is that Pat and I used to work together at an agency before we took off and kind of started doing our own thing. And I'm not used to being this close to one of my biggest competitors, but yeah, we aggregate. But yeah, we aggregate experiences across a lot of platforms because there is a tremendous difference in the infrastructure that an agency or a client's going to have to navigate to be able to get the reach that they're looking for. And like Pat was saying, Canoe had some really good ideas, but there was an enormous amount of work that it was going to take to get all those cable head ends lined up and running all that infrastructure, and then infrastructure to broadcast head end, et cetera, that kind of thing. So we'll see how ACR kind of goes and if that kind of helps move that forward. But pulling that all together for a client is a bit of work, and but they start to appreciate that sheer reach that Canoe had that high lofty goal for.
You've seen it in this country. It's always been the case as new media has been developed, and a lot of times it's developed by technology or consumer interest. It's been on the media owner's part versus the agencies to actually do a lot of the work. If you think back even the early days of cable, you may have had NBC and ABC and CBS buys made by an ad agency, and the agencies would do all the stewardship. Then when all the cable operators and networks came in, they had to do all the stewardship and work if they wanted to get on the buy. So it's a natural evolution. It sounds like you guys are doing it right. Along the lines of what's working as well, Roland, AT&T's had a lot of success in working with advertisers and marketers along the lines?
We have actually, we're a big believer in this sort of traditional approach of, the 30. It starts with the 30. 30s are about impressions. From impressions, you get engagement. From engagement, you get transactions. This conference, we talked a lot about T-commerce. We're a big believer in the bright future of that, or e-commerce on TV, whatever the heck you want to call it. And then ultimately relationship. AT&T, and I always get to say I'm in the unique responsibility of being a buy and a sell side guy. I'm responsible for building the products on the sell side, but my company is also a top 3 advertiser and spends $1.5 billion. So we actually get to see it from both sides. We get to see what works. We know what our sister brand companies want to do. We take those key learnings back into what we've done from the ground up in terms of this greenfield called Uverse TV, which is an IPTV platform, fully two-way interactive from the ground up. I got 10 million set-top boxes that are census-level data. I got ITV capabilities that, the guys up here that I deal with know that are pretty robust. So we have a lot of repeat business with advertisers. Our typical advertiser campaign goes anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. We have advertisers now re-up for the 4th time. They love the engagement time. We're blowing it off the chart, as I said.
What's a good engagement time? What do you find?
I'll say, let me put it this way.
How about Mattel? How do they do?
North of 22 minutes a session.
So think about that. That's pretty exciting. In this age where it's tough to get young girls to sit through a 30-second unit with a DVR, TiVo type of world, and you're certainly used to the fast pace of the web, if you can get young girls to watch and engage, more than just watch. I mean, we know from clicking that they're engaging. That's pretty powerful stuff, right?
What we've attempted to do is use the capabilities of the infrastructure and the platform in ways that blur the line between advertising and content and create sort of an advertainment. That's what creates the engagement. Whether or not I'm playing games or I'm getting to vote or I'm taking a poll, all those things that lead to the traditional stuff, that's more, RFI and all that. You do all that, but you don't really know that you're doing it. We've also created a new customer set out of it. We have a lot of relationships with some good programmers who have found that they actually can take some of those traditional affiliate marketing dollars, do some of this stuff on our platform, and really drive a lot of viewership that gets very sticky.
Good, so you're actually getting results. So in lieu of Canoe, we have seen that at Accelerated, at Pat's new company, and the new company's name once again is?
Engage TV.
Engage TV, and that's because you can engage on a few levels, I understand? What would that be?
Yeah, so we've basically broken this down to simplify it for the community. We see 3 products in Engage TV. There's Engage to Watch, which is all about extended viewing, brand engagement, those 22 minutes that Roland talks about. Engage to Get, which is the RFI field. That was largely where Canoe was focused. And Engage to Buy, which is T-commerce, and that's what our parent company, Delivery Agent, is really focused on.
Good, so that's 3 good focus there. In terms of numbers, just quickly, so you mentioned your minimum 10 million. Accelerated, you can deliver how many, Doug?
Well, like Pat was saying, if it's just video views, you start to pull together the 2 telco operators, the 2 satellite guys, and a collection of the largest MSOs. Now you're starting to hit 70 to 75 million
right,
TV
so
households.
Those are good sizable numbers. Then let's get to Chip, who's also delivering, a lot of households, eyeballs, and a lot of that is through Guide and other types of advertising, right, Chip?
Yeah, we're open for business and really have been for a year and a half. We have 20 million plus digital homes that have VOD, which give us the ability to put everything from the first 10 minutes of a movie to a half hour to whatever else you would like to have a longer immersion with the content. We have the iGuide in those 20 million. We have 15 million plus that are ITV enabled with the eBIF app, and I've been told that by the end of the calendar year, Kathleen, are they lying to us still? That by the end of the calendar year, the SA boxes should come in. So at that point, all of the digital footprint for Comcast will have a full ITV suite of products. We've done over 2,500 campaigns and had, 600 billion impressions that have been displayed by overlays against those 2,500 campaigns that we've
600 billion served.
Served.
Very nice. Good. So, and then we get to say
6
Aaron, Aaron at Google, where it's not necessarily interactive television as we know it, but Aaron's company, Google, of course, uses the digital platform and a lot of the great learnings from the web in terms of delivering impressions to succeed now on television in delivering to advertisers impressions and maybe better targeting than yesterday's television.
That is correct.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Would you like to elaborate? And at the same time, maybe as we can kind of now morph into some specific examples in advertisers where we've seen interactive or digital television work well.
Yeah, so our offering is about, again, the traditional 30-second spots, 60-second spots. But what we think that we add onto that is the measurement, the accountability, and the optimization. And a lot of what happens is advertisers are using our platform to target age, gender, presence of children in the household, but also on an interest-based level, whether people are interested in photography or other things. And they're able to optimize because it's an auction system, it's daily. Every day you can go in and actually tune your campaign and get better and better targeted towards your target audience. We have a lot of examples of advertisers who have come in, have spent money, sort of the traditional methods, come in and used us and reduced their costs by quite significant amounts based on the ability to target on that particular customer. And the way that they're able to measure that in the probably the best way is looking at direct actions that happen as a result of their TV campaigns. And I'll talk a little bit later about what we can do with attribution to web activity.
Good, that'll be good. And then I think, Josh, also, you've seen some cases where it's worked and where it's not worked. So on the positive side first, Josh, where have you seen interactive television work with some of your clients at ID Media?
Well, I think the biggest thing, I mean, our formula for success in the direct response space. So I'm the agency guy on the panel. I'll tell you from being in the trenches, we've seen fantastic engagement. There's a very simple formula for success in direct response. It's bring engagement up and bring costs down. And I think within the world of ITV, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to bring engagement up. But what we haven't solved for is bringing costs down. That is the struggle. So in the case studies that we've done, we've seen upwards of almost 40% lift in response. That's people either going to the website, people requesting more information, and things of that nature. Fantastic. The downfall and what really hurts to a certain extent, and what I was really very hopeful with Canoe, was pricing. The media pricing for the inventory, especially for national advertisers, is incredibly problematic. So you have to be able to offset the cost premiums for local cable inventory, if you're buying from an MSO or even satellite to a certain extent. You have to offset those cost premiums, and they're significant versus the national efficiencies that are in the marketplace. And then the other incredible hurdle is the production cost. So when you factor in the increase in media pricing and the increase for production, that 40% lift that we see, it does not offset the higher cost. And so when I was very hopeful for Canoe, when I was looking at it, is you could look at it from a technology standpoint, but what I was most hopeful was the idea of bringing national pricing, and in my line of work, national direct response television pricing, to the national cable networks to sell. If that would have happened, that could have made it a tipping point, and I think we would have many advertisers, many of my clients participate. And right now, it's frankly very hard to recommend because, frankly, that formula is broken. We have higher engagement, but the costs are tremendously inefficient compared to the higher response. So I feel, and you probably could expand on this, guys, that you probably see more brand advertisers in your line of work than potentially direct response, even though the foundation and the functionality is probably so pure and so great for direct response advertisers.
If I could just make clear to the crowd, so Josh runs a direct marketing agency, and what he's referring to is that the direct response and cost per lead and cost per, all of the interactions are generally the very low end of advertising and very effective, and they run a good business because everything is very measured very carefully. So there's kind of two challenges. One is to get this price in line with not brand advertising but with direct marketing advertising, and the second is that local advertising tends to be much higher in a CPM than national, which is also where you tend to operate. So there's two big challenges there, and maybe as the panel gets on, we can kind of address some of that.
Can I take a shot back on that?
Please.
So Josh is right, and in the DR space, this is very difficult because DR is dealing with a different metric. I mean, it's a lower CPM than what we see as brand advertisers. One of the challenges we've had with agencies, however, is we actually have to figure out what the common denominator for engagement time equates to. So if we have 250,000 hours of extended engagement, we actually have to break that down into how many 30s that is. and then factor that back in so you can get an effective CPM so you can drive this back down. We are dealing with local operator inventory, and on an aggregation model, you're never going to have a CPM as low as it is on a native national ad. But the fact of the matter is what we've seen, particularly over the last year, and we've seen it every single campaign, that when we factor in extended engagement or the interactive experience, what that equates to, we drive a more effective CPM than what was originally targeted in the buy.
Yeah,
so it's
Can you give
coming.
value to that, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, CPM's important, obviously. It's a currency. It's something you can look across different media types and evaluate. But how many sales have you driven? You know, what was the return on that investment that you're getting? And that's how I evaluate success in my client's business. You can look at time spent. It's an excellent metric. You know, obviously, especially for brand advertisers, that's an incredible currency. But did it move the needle? Did it move sales? And scale is problematic when you look at from that regard. So I would say CPM is important, but the most important, how did it affect the client's business, their business outcome? You know, you mentioned the word accountability. And for me, that's a tremendous, it's a very important word. And how is ITV accountable? And you could say, oh, the person watched this video asset for 22 minutes.
True.
What did that result into a back-end basis?
And you're right. I mean, there's a fairly large difference between direct response in terms of pick up the phone and fill out the application, et cetera, that kind of thing, and the brand guys, the brand advertisers that are spending a lot of time in the industry doing ITV campaigns, but also the brand guys are measuring results as well. For example, with the engagement on Barbie at 22 minutes, they see an increase in selling of dolls. With automotive guys that are in the space, consumer packaged goods guys that are in the space, they're tracking and they're actually watching each platform and how those platforms are comparing. Because you think about it, General Motors, Ford, all the big auto guys, they've got data on everybody in the country. So they know if you clicked, said, yes, send me the brochure, they watch the VOD, they know what that starts to eventually turn into in terms of sales. And they wouldn't be repeat buyers if it didn't work.
I think Roland's got a few thoughts there.
I guess I'm going to be the optimist on the panel. Strange role for me. I have a little bit, I guess, maybe a glass half empty view of this one, because, you know, as I said earlier, you know, you go from impressions to engagement to ultimately transactions. It's incumbent on us in the MVPD community to make sure our capability set allows, you know, 30s, whether they be DR or brand advertising, to ultimately drive transactions that are in fact measurable. We have, in my group, we talk about ad-enabled commerce all the time. So in essence, in our tool set, in our toolbox, basically, you know, to keep the costs down, right? I mean, we get, and these guys can attest to it, very simple assets to put in our format. The tool sets are already essentially built, and part of that toolkit is ultimately driving, you know, a transaction, and then measure that actual click. You know, that lean back experience is as measurable as a lean forward one. At least it is in our case. I mean, I have census level data, and we've built our infrastructure on the ITV side to take advantage of that. And, you know, we have no problem providing exactly what you're talking about. I'm not saying this as a sales pitch. I'm saying this as, I think, a roadmap for the business to make the efficacy a lot higher, to your points.
Look, the good news is that there's a tremendous amount of measurement here. I mean, certainly what ITV did, and you know, I built the Cablevision system, for most of you that know. You know, we took a lot of the metrics and the way that the web worked and built it into the most powerful medium, which is television, the sight, sound, and motion. Yet at the same time, you know, Josh's business is not a brand business, and the way Josh's clients evaluate is, you know, who buys after they see that ad. Now, for instance, a Ford, you may see 3 ads before you walk in to buy a Ford, and that's kind of a different model. But when you're, say, selling a financial services or credit card, while there is a brand agency that's all for making green cards look green and plum cards look plum, you know, your role and what your deliverables are to your client is, I spent X, I got how many deals done. And maybe there's a solution to it, Josh. I know you've kind of thought about this, and maybe there's a way of kind of working with the branding types to kind of make this all work. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we have to all ask ourselves, and I think you guys as well, is, you know, well, I guess what I do every day is it best to invest in this area, or do I move the money over to paid search, and what is the return there? Is that going to be more efficient? Or do I move it to digital video, or I like to call it digital DRTV, and is that going to drive a more efficient response? But I do think there is opportunities, especially for advertisers, and it tends to be more larger national-based advertisers that have both a brand and a direct response component, a direct response layer, if we could work together and somehow mitigate certain amounts of production cost. If they're paying it on the brand side, can we move and leverage those assets so we don't have to have a repetitive cost as it relates to production? Because if we could remove that $150,000 cost for a campaign, then you have an opportunity. Then we brought the cost down. We know the engagement's up. All of our, we've done numerous tests, and we know the engagement's going to be there, and it's strong. We just have to find ways to take cost and bring cost down.
So, Josh, that's a great idea. Look, as everybody knows, you need a creative branding agency to say what the green card is about, to say what the gold card is about, why buy it, what its valuation is, how to get attached to it. If you just had direct response that said, sign up here, it wouldn't happen as successfully if there wasn't a branding campaign before that happened. So I think your idea is good. How do you get the different parts of the business, the branding, and the direct marketing to work together? And Josh, is that a challenge? Because, there are different agencies for different, there's different creatives. I mean, while there's a lot of innovative people on the panel, for the most part, most creative folks at agencies are producing 30s and banners. They're not yet involved in producing long form or creative, even web, activity as well. So is that something that's possible, Josh? It's a good idea. How difficult, I guess, would it be? And is it easier than resurrecting a Canoe, say?
I mean, there is the siloed mentality. I mean, I've been working with ID Media for over 12 years, and we don't believe in that siloed mentality. And we partner with both creative agencies and many different even brand media agencies in close collaboration. So I don't have that viewpoint, and I haven't experienced that. I personally try to do what's in my client's best interest. So I do think there is opportunity, and I think many share that same belief. We all have revenue that we need to deliver, and I think we have to overcome that hurdle. But I think at the end of the day, we want to do what's in our client's best interest. And I think if you keep that as your guiding light and your vision, I think we could work together very, very well to achieve that goal.
Well, that's great. I think that shows some great leadership towards going there. Tell us what's going on in the
well, I think,
Comcast
though,
world,
just to go back to the DR piece again for a minute, I think we somewhat have the cart before the horse, because Josh has developed a great business that fills a very specific need for the programmer. I've got a bunch of inventory overnight I can't sell. And so basically there has been, particularly on a national level, there has been a very, very low price floor which existed because it's better than nothing, because there's nothing more tentative than air. It's going to go away tomorrow. So we've had this DR business that we all love, and you guys do a great job with it. But we didn't spend a boatload of money to develop this interactive stuff to support the bottom of our inventory
All right, so
pyramid.
what Chip's talking about, sorry to interrupt, is if you look at any of the plethora of cable networks, there's a lot of infomercials overnight where they couldn't sell 30, so there's very cheap half-hour programs and 2 minutes.
And even the 30s. I mean, at
Right.
MTV Networks, we had a whole division. Discovery's lauded for that. So there are billions of dollars spent in this. But I think if we take a look at a lot of the things about repeat business and scale, what's interesting about the way that eBIF rolled out around Comcast is it didn't start with the national pool that we're all talking about with, The Voice or USA or any one of these networks. It started in Chicagoland. So the Chicagoland Ford dealers went out there, and they did an interactive campaign, and they took a look at their own records, and we all took a look at Polk data, and realized that a model rolled out in the entire United States, and in those markets where there was an ITV campaign, and I agree, we're trying to figure out what the price point was, there was enough of an incremental return on investment as measured by incremental registration of this particular car as a CDI, BDI analysis that ITV made sense in that situation. I think that Josh's solution is going to come probably 2 years from now, perhaps sooner, when there are national campaigns, and in order to get maybe a nickel more for the spot, the network partners of yours will ITV enable the spots. But I think since the local markets that are driving this at this point, that have driven our 2,500 ads, since we have a different economics based on geography, it's going to be a bit of a square peg round hole for a while.
All right, so while Canoe had the blazing ambition of national all over, the local and regional ITV business, one would characterize as relatively good, solid, robust.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And just one more point, if it comes off of that, and I made the comment that operators didn't stop, wait for Canoe. You know, in the DR situation, I think one of the most intriguing solutions out there is Barry's, what you came up with on Cablevision. It's click to call, so it's right out of the spot, right out of the DR spot. The
Uverse is doing that as well, right?
And AT&T just launched that recently. So I mean, I think this is my point. It's going deeper and deeper, and they are finding solutions even in that DR space. And I don't think a DR, you know, some of the experiences that we've developed on ITV are necessarily great for DR, but I think that's spot on, and I think click to buy out of the spot is going to be spot on too.
Yeah, and the good news is there's continuing innovation along the lines of metrics and accountability. That's something Google has done well in focusing on, right?
Well, I actually, yeah, I mean, of course, it's something that we, you know, it's the foundation of our business. You know, the search advertising, of course, is about as accountable as you can get. I was actually want to go back to a previous point that Josh had made about costs and production and scalability and trying to get everything out there. I'm just wondering if IP and the web are going to have an impact in this area, because I was very intrigued that Microsoft announced that they're going to put Internet Explorer on the Xbox, and of course Google TV has had Chrome and the native browser on their box for a year and a half. I'm wondering if that sort of scale, obviously HTML is very scalable across the entire planet, if that helps solve some of those problems that you had addressed. I'd be interested in hearing what the rest of the panel thinks.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, if you take a look at the history of interactive television advertising, it's actually relatively short. It's been talked about and worked on for a long time. But also, if you step back just 10 years ago, there was probably a 10 million TV household footprint. That was it. So I think the dollars have been being spent to just grow the reach. And now I think the next phase of that's going to be the efficiencies. I mean, we see production costs, like Josh is talking about, started off with one platform. Well, you needed 2 or 3 software developers and a couple of graphics guys just to build one simple interactive kind of experience. Well, these days that same team can build that same experience and run across 15, 20 different types of platforms. So I don't have the thing down to where it's free, but it's much, much, much cheaper, and it's heading in the right direction as it relates to production costs.
Right, so
now,
that's good news. So everything evolves.
Exactly.
Right.
As HTML5 and other types of platforms come on, you just start to add that on, and you start to get that bigger and bigger reach to where I think you're going to get to the point where it's going to be a tiny percentage above and beyond the media buy to create the experience.
So that's kind of interesting. There's evolving technologies. There's economies of scale as people get used to creating and producing. Where does second screen fit in? There's been a lot of dialogue and conversation here over the past couple of days about second screen. Does ITV enhance the second screen experience? Does second screen diminish the ITV experience? Can they work together? Roland, what's your thoughts on some of that?
I mean, this is something for us that we have a unique sort of position in at AT&T with our history on some of these devices, iOS in particular. We believe, candidly, in our strategy is hinged upon driving the ITV value, okay, sort of inside out, and ultimately taking that engagement, and that transaction stuff, and do things. Essentially, it still starts with the 30. Still starts with the ITV component, but driving it down, to the second screen where you can have maybe some easier engagement where people do want to type. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about browsers just a second ago. I've been in this business 25 years, and I've seen Web TV, AOL TV, and a whole host of other initiatives where people try to put keyboards on laps have failed miserably. And I swear to God, I'm getting dizzy because it keeps coming back around,
Mm-hmm.
And I personally I'm not a big believer. I've seen it fail too many times. I am a believer in the second screen or connected device as a complement to driving the user experience as a replacement for the remote control. And I think if we're smart, what we really do to help everybody's problem here, and everybody, I'm not being self-serving at all. I think we all benefit from intelligently driving the ITV, the experience from the inside out, as I call it, from the ITV to the connected device, and keep that user engaged in both the video experience, as well as what they're doing to engage with either the brand or buy the product or whatever the heck it may be. Because in the end, once you lose, and there's this bifurcation, and depends on who you talk to, there's a lot of bifurcation out there. If I'm bartering as a content provider to go to Shazam, I've devalued the entire ad pod that comes right after that, because I'm going to Shazam looking for companion content. I'm no longer watching television. And if you're like me and you're paying big bucks to be in that A position, you got a problem with that. And that's a $70 billion business I don't think anybody in this room wants to kill.
So that could
Right?
help the branding equation. It
Absolutely.
could make a 1 + 1 = 3, if I'm reading it correctly, Roland.
That's exactly where I'm
And
going.
it also can help Josh's challenge of getting more people to sign up on that longer second screen experience.
If we're smart enough to do it in a way that doesn't cannibalize the business model and the relationships we have, embraces the HTML5, the great leveler ways to keep the cost down and to make it work properly, I think we have a huge opportunity with this. Right now, the world, this is very nascent, it's very new. Like everything else, it starts out incredibly fragmented, and everybody's trying to sort out the agendas. And we have a lot of new players now, with the CE manufacturers and other that are now in the conversation that never been before. So it's a very exciting but also a very tenuous time. And I
Now,
would just
so it's interesting. You've got CE manufacturers that are talking about advertising. You've got second screen.
Right.
Now, I think also in second screen, Chip, there's some areas where there's guides on second screens. And are you involved in that to any degree?
I am. As I said before, I actually run the ad sales business for the set-top box-based
Chip, hold the mic a little closer.
Rovi Guide.
Thanks.
And what we've started to do at Comcast, what had been Comcast.net is now being rebranded and refurbished as an entertainment portal. So there's a whole bunch more content on home pages and throughout the entire site in what was at one point a way to get to your email. At the same time we're doing that, to keep that stickier and to reinforce the entertainment positioning, a lot of the television ITV functionality is moving on to the web. And we're not the first to do this, but you'll be able to remotely set your DVR. You'll be able to do parental controls and run a lot of your viewing experience in the second screen. So the thinking being that you could watch the primary set, not tarnish the image of your 62-inch set, get additional content from your iPad at the same time you'll do any number of other functionalities that are there.
I think there is a critical component, whether it's a second screen and what type of second screen, is cookies. And being able to retarget is an incredibly powerful tool to utilize for marketers. And that is a weakness that if you're in ITV, when you drive people to a content destination on the television set, that is a weakness that they have to deal with, because being able to remarket to people that visited your site and doing it very strategically is a very powerful force, and that actually drives conversions and reconversions in that way. And when you asked the question, what power does putting a browser on an Xbox or any other type of device, to me, that's the potential. Going to a mobile, you have a certain weakness associated with cookie-based targeting there, and maybe that will change over time. But being able to retarget and remessage to prospects, I think, is an incredibly powerful force. And I just wanted to mention it because it is a critical element to success.
So, Josh, your company is deeply and well-versed in internet and experience of what works. And I kind of asked the panel, because when you mention cookies, do you hold the ITV advertising to a higher standard than, say, regular 30s? I mean, because asking cookies of television, regular 30s, or the $80 billion spent in 30 in this country, can't even give an accurate rating. I mean, they're basically taking Nielsen of, 12,000 homes, taking the measure of 300 million viewing Americans. Here you're already delivering metrics, you're delivering post-analysis, you're delivering optimization. Here you've got a very astute advertising guy that says, now I want cookies and the other in metrics, and you're delivering a lot of impressions. Where do you folks, do you run up against this, where you find people are holding you to a higher standard of web when you're delivering more than TV to begin with? Absolutely.
I mean, that's the fundamental word. I'll bring up the dirty P word. It's called privacy. Whether you're a Title VI or a Title II MVPD, the internet rules basically don't apply to you. You have a whole lot higher level of standard for what you can and can't do with TV and TV data. And that's what a lot of my internet colleagues haven't yet quite learned. As they get into the more traditional TV space, they're going to learn that very quickly. You know, so we take that very serious at AT&T and at AdWorks. So we spend a lot of time thinking about how to build an audience network and use that data that we have. It's so rich, but we have to work through the guidelines of a Title II MVPD, which is what we are, and where those cross the lines with those other horizontal mediums, which are pretty much guided by internet
Right.
ideas of privacy. This is a brave new world. This stuff hasn't
So
even been
what
thought
are
about
you
or talked
folks
about in
saying?
DC yet. So
I mean, putting a URL on a TV spot, traditional 30, and measuring the volume and then being able to remarket to the people that visited the site and taken specific actions in the site is incredibly valuable.
Right.
I just have to ask myself, is moving some to a content destination on a TV, does it have that same level of value
Compared
if
to
I
the
move
web.
them to the web? And if you had more content, they spent more time on the television, great. If the numbers are higher, great. But if it's slightly different, you probably have more benefit driving them to the web. So again,
do you
it
guys
just
find that? I mean, at Accelerated, when you're working with Lincoln, do they say to you, I need cookies, I need all this? Or do they say, wow, you're giving me some interactivity, and the sight, sound, power of the big screen showing a great Lincoln is better than my father's 30?
Well, there hasn't been a real request for cookies or anything along those lines.
probably because it's siloed, right? Probably because you have a digital practitioner who knows that world, and you have the TV buyer that's buying from you or working and partnering with you. It's not even thinking that way. That's my
Well,
guess.
It might be a blend. might be a bit of a blend of the two. But you're right, Josh. There's quite a bit of silos amongst agencies and heck, even with some of the larger brands themselves. But they haven't really been requesting cookies. It's really been, like what you're saying, Barry, is relying on the data that all of these systems deliver to them to leverage that 30-second spot that they're buying, either at the platform level or on the national level, and just leveraging that kind of data. Because they realize that, like Nolan was saying, you've got to really be careful when it comes to the television space about privacy.
So
And-
we're really kind of combining a lot of media here, where the attributes of direct marketing, the attributes of branding. We've got web analysis, web deliverables, the television medium. Pat, do you find there's silos as well? Does it make it easier, more challenging? And then what do you all kind of think, or anybody has thoughts? And Aaron, I'm sure you're steeped in this too. Where are the decision makers coming from and aspiring to vis-a-vis digital versus television? And I throw an example out there. Yes, there's absolute silos. There's a lot of experience on the TV area, and there's a lot of different experience on the web area. But we have, for instance, at Universal McCann now, where the top digital buyer is now also the top TV buyer. Does that help? Is that happening more or less? Who's got some thoughts on that? Aaron?
Well, I mean, clearly there's a lot more blending of the digital and traditional sides. And we've seen, I'd say a few years ago when we showed up and we were doing pitches at agencies, a lot of folks would look at us and they weren't quite sure who should be in the room, whether it should be the digital team or whether it should be the traditional TV team. That is changing. You have these groups, I mean, some folks call them amphibious groups. Other agencies have different names for it, where they blend these.
We've only got 3 more canoe boats swimming kind of things left in the
where they blend these things together. So I actually think that second screen. I agree with Roland that second screen is an incredibly compelling, powerful new trend. I think I would sort of take it up a level and say this is about connecting TV to online. And when you see, like, for example, we have a lot of customers, obviously Google, we have a lot of online customers, their entire businesses are run online, and they start running a few TV ads with us, and all of a sudden they just flip out, their servers crash, like they have no idea how much reach the TV can actually deliver. So marrying that TV reach to the online sort of engagement, interaction, and actions, immediate actions, I think is a really powerful experience. We have a tool on our platform called Web Attribution that actually allows you to tune your campaign to drive visits to your website. A case study with Blue Nile, where they were able to actually reduce their cost per visit by a third.
Just so you know, I do that every day.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned that people care less about, well, they care obviously about the CPMs, but that cost per attributed visit, that is real money to Blue Nile. I mean, that is actual money in their pocket. And so that's what they buy us for, is that actual accountability that the web delivers.
So we see some consistent themes coming out of this panel. We see that there are attributes of traditional TV. Aaron, you mentioned tremendous reach, the ability to really make a mark. We see, a lot of the direct marketing techniques that Josh's company's developed, and really seeing what works and what doesn't work in kind of an immediate response mechanism. We see the power of metrics and deliverables and optimization on ITV driven from the web. Are there any other examples of where you've been able to not necessarily say a campaign was good or bad, but where was it optimized in any of your experiences? Pat, you've worked with a lot of different clients. Can you coach your clients in saying, use this banner, use that one, this is working, that's not working?
So a couple of things. It's interesting that we talk about the second screen, because the second screen without the power of the first screen really has little implication in this business today, and we've talked about that, the power of television. We can't today replicate what happens on a second screen on the primary screen. We have limited ITV experiences. Connected TV is going to change that. I don't know that necessarily people want to have two pieces, watch TV and have something in their hand and do this and this and this. I think if it's all migrated to one experience that's easy to use, it might change our perspective on it. Going back to your second question, what we do from an optimization standpoint, there's more money spent on TV than any other media. One of the reasons for that is television is incredibly powerful and it's easy to funnel an audience. Trying to advertise online, I always say it's the world's largest phone book, and it is incredibly hard to optimize. Once you find your audience, you can continue to go back, as Josh points out, and remarket. TV, we have a limited footprint. We can find where people are. We try to go after them. And what ITV allows us to do is look at what they're watching, look at their level of engagement, their level of interest, what they're doing, and from that we can optimize media buys, which becomes the billion-dollar answer to the agencies. If I can learn more than just getting an RFI out or learning about this customer, if I can actually take my learnings from ITV and use it to optimize television buys, that's a really powerful tool.
And it helps Josh, you get near where you're aspiring to go, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, TV is definitely a driving force, and adding a second screen component, it starts with TV. We work with a strategic partnership with a company called ShopText, and we've seen when we incorporate an SMS response device on our TV spots, depending upon the category advertiser, we see a 30 to 600% lift in response versus a control response mechanism. So teen girls, they're engaging 600% more with their mobile device and through SMS than they do going to a URL or picking up a phone. So
that's because the phone has never left their hands.
Because the phone has never left their hands, and they're very comfortable, and it's very intuitive to how they operate in their everyday lives.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a lot of digital natives, and the intuition there of having this is incredible. At Cablevision, we did the click to send something to mail, click to send something to email, click to call, as Pat mentioned, and then the click to text was very well received as well. Where does all this go? Where does the future of ITV go? Your own products, Roland. What do you kind of see in the next? Before we get to kind of the elaborate final answer, just where's ITV morphing to at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of the right themes today. I think really where it really goes is to ultimately evolve those tool sets that fit people's lifestyles, and whether it's QR codes or short text or all that type of stuff. Again, it's taking that that traditional advertising 101, impression, engagement, transaction, ultimately to drive.
Do you like QR codes relevant to ACR on the TV?
We've actually found good reception to QR codes. I mean, we're in my lab, we're working on all kinds of stuff all the way up to and including augmented reality. I could get really weird with you and talk about all that crazy stuff that's coming.
I would probably say the only way to get QR codes to work on television is if you have like a Billy the Kid guy that could pull out his phone quick enough to snap the picture and have the right software. So
Right. But I mean, when you talk about connected devices, what gets us excited about ITV is literally, you get to a point where you have people with remotes in their hands and they have the connected device in their hands. And what you really want to create is a world where they can basically do the same. Whether it's gestorial, where I'm sitting there and I'm watching a Kraft commercial for mac and cheese, and I take my phone out and I gesture like this, and the coupon comes to me, or I basically click, on the screen because the invitation says, click here and we'll send it to you because we already know your profile, we already know we know your phone number, it comes right to your phone. Either way, at the end of the day, the power of the medium and how people interact it will evolve, and as long as we make it simpler, we make the return on investment for the advertisers work, and we make the return on investment for the, as you know, as my buddy Chip down here saying, the amount of money we've invested in this stuff, and I can tell you, you know, our numbers are with B's to build Uverse and in the state-of-the-art IPTV platform from the ground up. I mean, as long as everybody plays on an open playing field and there's enough to go around, I think we have a very, very bright future. I think a lot of things are coming that are going to blur the lines between that lean back, lean forward experience. But if we do it in such a way where every segment from millennials to 45 to 64-year-olds basically can get what they need out of it or ignore it effectively, you know, you've done your job. We don't really talk about that. What about the people that don't want to do all this stuff? The people that are going to buy a connected TV and see multiple pop-ups over the television screen. Anybody here going to be happy with that?
Well, I think when you mentioned the...
We don't like it on the web. You're going to like it on TV, but it's about to happen.
Well, when you mention, I think quite astutely, the lean back, lean forward experience, you've got a whole experience from leaning back to people that don't want to do anything, but may do something if motivated in the right way to lean forward. You've also got the big 60-inch screen, you know, right down through the pads, the laptops to the mobile. So it seems that the sharp companies are all thinking about this. I'd like to, by the way, think if there's any questions. We're going to take a couple of questions from the audience, but before we get to that, let's just kind of do a quick run through on each one of you. What do you think is in the near future that's most exciting to you, to your company, to your clients? And give me maybe just a quick, why don't we start with Josh and we'll run down quickly on just a quick version of what you like going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I look at things like Viggle, an application that's really connected to the television in a very smart way. Viggle.
Viggle, right.
I look at what Xbox is doing. I think that's super smart. Netflix, when you can get that to operate and you have loads of content at your fingertips, I think that is, in essence, the future and how television is going to morph in really a very short number of years.
From Viggle to Google.
I think I saw the future a few weeks ago when my friend and his daughter visited my house, and Claire said, "Have you seen this video on YouTube?" And Don said no, and so I fired up the Google TV, and we got the YouTube app up there, and we watched the video, and then we watched another video, and then someone thought of another one, and before we knew it, an hour and a half later, these folks had come for the weekend to visit New York, and we spent an hour and a half in my apartment watching YouTube videos. I think IP video in the living room on the large screen is an inherently communal experience, and I think it is a very compelling experience for users. And I think IP video is going to be a big, big story. We're talking 3 billion hours per month of IP video that's being viewed across 350 million devices today, and that number is growing like crazy.
Excellent. Chip?
From the operator standpoint, I see a continued spread of the interactive capabilities. So all VOD will be interactive. All set-top boxes will have all networks will be interactive. All set-top boxes can support it. And I think at the back end of that, we're going to have some stewardship systems that make it an awful lot easier to sell it. Because what we didn't get a chance to talk about today is if we're successful and we get a campaign together, getting paid for it is impossible because no one can read the invoice, and we have yet to standardize those processes.
Good point.
I look forward to this dialogue that's evolved from, over the years talking about scale to today we talked about pricing. That seemed to be the biggest hitch, to talking about results. And I think as we get forward into next year, I think this panel could be reverted to tell us what's worked. And I'll tell you what worked. We just finished a Victory motorcycle campaign that a lot of people heard about last year. It hit 70 million homes. I think the agency might be represented here. They drove 260,000 hours of extended engagement. They did 75,000 RFIs. Their sales were up 82% year over year in the same period, and they told us today they sold 600 bikes off of the RFIs. $18,000 a bike, do the math.
Actually, I think some of the things that are very exciting near term are the proliferation of connected TVs, streaming devices, and all that additional content, and second screens, and it just gives advertisers and marketers more tools to target the audience and how they behave and what they're willing to interact with.
Great, and I think we're going to just wrap up with Roland because we're done, so no time for questions. I apologize. The final word
I'll be succinct. I mean, I think from our perspective, what's kind of exciting is the renaissance that's going on now in terms of around choice, convenience, and control. That's what people want out of video and television. That's what they've always wanted. It's been that the entire way of my career. And now what's happening is you're getting a lot of forces that are driving the right conversations about discoverability, user interface, and horizontal consumption. Meaning, it used to be about a DVR and time shifting. Now it's about place shifting. Source agnostic, IP or not. I have an IP video platform, so I could care less where it comes from. For me, it's irrelevant. It's just content. But in the end, the winner needs to be the consumer. Because if the consumer wins, then the marketers that are marketing to them will win in the end. And that's basically what we're about as an organization.
That's great. Well, I think we've got some thought leadership accomplished here today. Josh has provoked us in terms of melding the values of direct marketing to the sellers in the group, and how we kind of get the silos broken down, have the best of digital, the best of traditional television. And, I think we went from kind of a bit of a listing ship at the beginning to, as Roland said, a renaissance. So thank you all, and thank you for attending. Appreciate your help. Thanks for the panel.